Welcome to Coffee with Catholic Workers, a podcast from and about folks involved in the Catholic worker movement. I'm Theo.
And I'm Lydia, and we've both been active in the Catholic Worker for the past decade, and we're excited to introduce all of you to some of our favorite people from the movement.
Today we're happy to welcome Ericka Williams Rodriguez to the show, currently of the Littleflower Catholic Worker Farm in Virginia. Ericka shares with us a fascinating story of finding the movement despite the generational pain caused by the larger Catholic Church.
Well, Ericka, we're really excited to hear about some of the initiatives and explorations you've been involved in, both with like Catholic workers stuff, but then also in support of a bunch of different BIPOC groups seeking to build community and build connections. But before we jump into sort of all the work you're currently doing, could you maybe tell us a little bit about how you came to be involved with the Catholic Worker?
Yeah, sure. So about 8 years ago, my partner and I, my husband, we moved to Louisa, Virginia, to learn how to farm at a place called Living Energy Farm. And it's we wanted to be a part of a community that was not using fossil fuels. And Living Energy Farm runs their farm without using any fossil fuels. So we learned how to farm there. And while we were there, we noticed that this couple would come around a lot and borrow things and bring food. And we were wondering, like, who are these guys? And why do you always give them free stuff? And they said, well, we give them free stuff because they've dedicated their lives to social justice and to caring for people. And I learned the story of Sue and Bill Frankelstrait, Sue and Bill Littleflower, as they're widely known. And we started to visit them, and we learned that they spent 10 years of their life raising their 3 children in a homeless shelter in Washington, D.C. that they helped start, and that they spent their first year of marriage separately in prison for plowshares action. And we were just blown away. We didn't know anything like the Catholic Worker or this intense activism existed. And I grew up in Staten Island, New York, where Dorothy Day is buried, and spent a lot of time. And I never heard her name growing up. And I went to Catholic church when I was a child and never heard her name mentioned, even in, Staten Island, where she was, spent a lot of her time. So I was just so surprised, and that I didn't know who Dorothy Day was, and I didn't know about the existence of this movement. And so we were just really inspired by their lives, and we were really inspired by just their dedication to serving people. Their 3 kids, biological kids, are grown now, and they've adopted 4 children that they're raising, and they did that in their 50s. So we said, well, we could be doing so much more for people and for the world, and we could have a much more fulfilling spiritual life being connected to these people. So I was very, how can I say this? I was very, at first, really put off by the word Catholic worker because of the damage that the Catholic Church has done to Black and Indigenous communities and to my own family. My grandmother and her sisters were raised in a Catholic orphanage in New York, where they were abused and beaten when they spoke Spanish. They were taken along with about 30 other children from Ponce, Puerto Rico in the 1940s by the church. It's unclear why or how they got the children from their parents. We don't know if it was like they said we can give them a better life and we can clothe and feed them, or if they just took them. We really don't know. So they were raised in this orphanage, and it had a profound effect on their lives. They witnessed beatings, they witnessed murders. I mean, there were children that were pushed out of windows in order to scare the other children into submission. And when they were adults, they never really fully recovered from that. All three were alcoholics and really suffered as adults because of what they endured as children. I remember, walking through the streets of New York City with my grandmother and her being stopped by a Spanish-speaking person in the street asking for directions, and she would just break down in tears and just be so ashamed that she couldn't speak Spanish. And it wasn't her fault. She was beaten when she spoke Spanish, and I guess it was a way to force the children to speak English and assimilate them to the culture. And I guess that may have been how they justified it within themselves. But it was really horrific for these children. So at first I said, how could I call myself a Catholic, anything, because that name, that word, as a brown person, that word has done so much damage to my community. But I started to research the Catholic Worker and read Dorothy Day and Peter Marin's writings, and I understood that the church is very different from the Catholic Worker, and I do have Catholic roots. I spent time going to church with my grandfather as a child, much to my grandmother's dismay. She didn't want us baptized as children because, she was told over and over that she was sinful as a child. And she was adamant that children don't have any sin and babies don't have any sin. So she didn't want us baptized, but my grandfather went ahead behind her back and baptized me and my sister. And so, I became more comfortable with the word Catholic. And, the word Catholic actually translates to universal, right? So I have sort of taken on that meaning because I cannot bring it within myself to attend Catholic church at this time, because without the church and the different popes have made apologies about what has happened to Indigenous children and the doctrine of discovery, but the apologies without reparations and without meaningful discussion about how the church can really try to attempt to make up for the evils that have been done. Until that happens, I don't think I could step foot in a Catholic church. So we left Living Energy Farm. And we left, Littleflower in Louisa and moved back to New Jersey, where we studied about the Catholic Worker more and visited the New York Worker, and decided to start a Catholic Worker in Elizabeth, New Jersey. We started that in the upstairs apartment of my mother-in-law's house. And it was a 2-bedroom apartment that we began taking in women who were suffering from addiction and their children that I would meet at the Elizabeth Homeless Coalition Soup Kitchen. There were women who were coming in with children who were pretty clearly addicted and were afraid to ask for help, and were afraid to go to try to get into a rehab because they didn't want to lose their children, because sometimes when a child goes into foster care, horrible things happen to them. And these stories are well known, and parents do not want to subject their children to child protective services. And when when a parent has no family who's willing to take the child in while they get help, they lose their child, and it's very hard for them to get it back. So this is why a lot of parents don't seek help when they're going through addiction. So I started to befriend some of these women, and one by one would take them into the 2-bedroom apartment. Me and my husband and 2 children were in 1 bedroom, and the woman and her children were in the other. And after a couple of days, we would sit down with her and say, "Listen, you need help. You need to get into a rehab, and we will take temporary custody of your children while you do that, and we'll bring your child to visit you. And when you get out, you can come back here, and we'll help set you up in an apartment." So we did that work for a little while, for about a year. And then Alexandria Adesso from the LA Catholic Worker, who was originally from New Jersey, Elizabeth actually, and many years ago tried to start one there, but really couldn't find anybody to work with, and decided to move to LA. She had heard about what we were doing and called and said, "I'm from Elizabeth and I'd like to be close to my family." So we said, "Yeah, come on down." And she did, and she is still there running the Elizabeth, New Jersey Catholic Worker. We moved on after my husband had an accident. He had a 700-pound boiler, industrial boiler, that goes into a New York City apartment building fall on top of him. And he had to have several back and neck surgeries, 6 surgeries altogether. And we decided to move to Pennsylvania, where my cousin had a 5-bedroom house that she was willing to rent to us for $500 a month. And it was more financially manageable than living in Elizabeth, because even though we were in my mother-in-law's house, she had a mortgage, and we had, pretty high rent, $1,500 a month we were paying. So we left and went to Pennsylvania, and where he had his 6 surgeries, and we ran a food pantry and a house of hospitality in Nesquehoning, Pennsylvania. So we did that work for a couple of years until the local priest came to visit and said, what he asked what he could do to further our work or to help us. And I told him we needed a building. We needed a building to house people in, because Carbon County, Pennsylvania at the time had no homeless shelter at all in the whole county. And the county consists of 6 or 7 towns. So he showed us a closed school and church with an 8-bedroom house attached to the school in the next town over of Lansford, Pennsylvania. And so we raised the money to purchase it. It was $80,000 for both buildings. And we opened a free store and a food pantry there. And we're taking people into the house with us. So that went on for 2 years, and the boiler went on the building, and the roof needs a lot of repair, and we spent about $8,000 one winter heating the building, and so we said, this is a lot to handle. We tried to raise the money to fix the roof of the building and get a new boiler, but that was very slow going. So Lansford is a very, very conservative town, and I thought it would be possible for a brown woman to own a Catholic church there and there not be any problems. But I was wrong. People were angry that we owned the church, and they were like, "You are taking homeless people into a church. This is wrong." You know, the conservative mindset of people who go to Catholic churches is that, you know, the church is the church. The church is there for people to go on Sundays and have bingo and these things. It's not a homeless shelter. You shouldn't take homeless people to sleep in a church. That was the overwhelming story and narrative that we were hearing from the people in town. And you know, it's a very conservative, Trump supporting town, and I, you know, dedicate a lot of my time to activism. And last year I went to Line 3 in Minnesota and was arrested and charged with a felony for locking down to the axle of a truck that was carrying a drill that was going to drill under the Mississippi. And so when I got home, the headline in the local newspaper was "Local Church Owner Arrested." No context, just local church owner arrested. I mean, there was an article, but many people didn't get past the headline, I don't think. And so there was more adversion to us being there. And so between just the politics of living in a conservative 95%, probably 99% white town, and the mounting money issues with trying to fix the buildings, we decided to move to Littleflower in Virginia, where we are now, and attempt to raise the money from here and be in community with Sue and Bill and their family and the guests that are here, which is really beautiful and fulfilling for us. And, you know, we get to help Bill and Sue with the teenagers that they're raising, and around the farm, they have just dedicated their lives to caring for people, and they need help now. So we are so glad to be here with them. Although sometimes it feels like they work harder than us.
Wow, what a journey. And so the plan is, or the hope is, to eventually raise the money for the buildings in Carbon County to return there?
Yeah, that is the main goal, but it's like we need to raise like $500,000. So
Sure.
it's a whole lot. And so I don't know if that's ever going to come to fruition, but the free store and the food pantry are still running there. There is a local woman that we befriended who has been in the town for 20 years, and people like her very much, and she doesn't get arrested, and and she's able to exist and run things there a little more smoothly than I could.
Yeah. It really is the blessing and the curse of those big buildings, of beautiful and also really difficult to upkeep. There's a Catholic worker here in Chicago that is like that, where it's always a struggle of keeping up the infrastructure. And I know, Theo, for you, the St. Louis worker, also it's the big building, big church building.
Yeah, I mean, this is really a cathedral. It has a it has a clock tower. I mean, it's a massive, massive church, and I thought that about 20 minutes from there, there's a group called the Hazelton Integration Center, and they bought a church and a school in Hazelton, Pennsylvania, where the town was 99% white, and a lot of undocumented people and migrants started moving into the town, and they were having a hard time existing because people wouldn't give them jobs, people wouldn't rent apartments or houses to them. So this woman, Elaine Madden, she started the Hazelton Integration Center. She has a cousin who's very wealthy who bought the buildings and completely remodeled them. And so that place is very successful. And the town is now 60% Hispanic and
Wow.
and 40%, about 30% white and 10% black and other. Um, so I thought this could work 20 minutes away, but I didn't have a cousin with $1 million, and and uh, and she's a white woman who is able to fundraise more easily than a black or brown person who sometimes white people really distrust you know, underneath even if there's white people working um in social services and philanthropy, and they're doing good things, they it seems my experience is they seem to still distrust black and brown people a little bit, and it's really hard to raise money as as a black or brown person.
So, in thinking about that, so there's this aspect of the Catholic worker that, you know, at least in the Midwest, we've been talking about for quite some time. Both Theo and I are in Midwest Catholic workers. But the Catholic worker is pretty white. And so as a person of color, that can be kind of tough to stick it out in a primary white movement. What is it that keeps you going or keeps you within the movement?
Well, it has been hard for me over the years, um, explaining to people why I am involved with a group that is so white. Like, there really are not a whole lot of black and brown Catholic workers. Um, and I have struggled with that a lot. And to what I have done is um, started a nonprofit, even though as Catholic workers, we don't like to engage with the government much, but I see that it is a tool that I needed to use because I was trying to fundraise in more grassroots ways by going to churches and reaching out to people who are dedicated to social and racial justice work, and that was not bringing in the amount of money that really needs to be brought in for racial justice to happen. So I started this nonprofit called Serenity Solidarity, that is dedicated to raising money for BIPOC-led communal living projects and community service initiatives. So I said to myself, I feel that I am at my core a Catholic worker. I have not met any other group really that has this dedication to personalism, this dedication to serving the poor and activism. And it's like my three favorite things all in one, And I just love many of the people, the elders in the Catholic Worker, Sue and Bill Littleflower, the Claire Schaefer Duffy, and just incredible people who have done incredible things in their lives. And so I feel very connected to the Catholic Worker, but I needed to counter those feelings of, being part of a community that is white led. I believe that there are many Black and brown people who really love the ideals and the motivations behind the Catholic Worker, and love to farm, and would love to start hospitality houses, but they cannot call themselves Catholic workers or Catholic anything. They hear that and they're put off by it. So I believe that Catholic worker style communities should sprung up by another name, so that Black and brown people can be involved. So what I'm doing now is raising money for different groups who want to purchase land, like the Las Palmas Land Trust, who are here in Louisa. They're a group of undocumented families who have lived in a trailer park near here for many, many years, and they cannot purchase land. They cannot purchase houses because, they're undocumented. They can't go the conventional route of a mortgage. So we raised $20,000 for them this year to purchase houses for their members, and they've already purchased one house, and still have $10,000 of that $20,000 left to purchase another house. And so I'm involved in many groups like those groups. So there's a lot of mutual aid networks that are run by Black and brown people that are in dire need of support. So I write grants and reach out to organizations and philanthropies to raise money for these groups.
Right on. And before talking with us, you sent a blog about you've also done work with folks in Puerto Rico, right? Around energy independence and stuff like that. Do you want to tell us a little about that?
Sure. Yeah. So Living Energy Farm, the farm I was telling you about, they have been making these solar ovens and sourcing these solar refrigerators that people in the US are largely uninterested in. People, a lot of people in the US, in the States, they the people who in the States who get solar energy are usually rich people who can afford solar panels and solar equipment. And they want to be able to spread energy independence to people who are suffering in other countries and cannot afford these types of systems. here we are pretty fortunate not to have frequent blackouts and things like that. So I guess that is why people aren't rushing towards solar energy. But in Puerto Rico and in many other places, their energy systems are very unreliable. Puerto Rico is energy a company, Luma, is a very, very corrupt company who has gotten so much money that they should have been able to fix the infrastructure that their electricity runs on 3 times over. And people are just constantly having blackouts and electricity, out for a month. And this is not just a comfortability issue. This is a issue of life or death. People have medication that needs to be refrigerated. There's a lot that that people can't have water if there's no electricity because the water pumps are electrical. So Living Energy Farm asked me to help spread this technology to people in Puerto Rico who cannot afford it. So this year we brought 12 electricians from Puerto Rico to train at Living Energy Farm on DC microgrid systems, which is direct current microgrid systems. And this is solar technology that doesn't use batteries, right? Because solar panels, let's be honest, are sourced through slavery, and the batteries are being mined for, the lithium and the elements that go into the batteries are being mined, and so that's destroying the environment, and that's putting people into slavery. So these systems don't use batteries at all. So it sort of minimizes the damage that it's doing to the earth and to people. And is it the answer to our environmental problems? No, right? But this technology does exist, and there are people in Puerto Rico who are suffering. So I rationalized it within myself to, work getting people these systems, because this is what we have right now, and it's a good first step, I suppose. And people are literally going to die if they don't have refrigeration, if they don't have water. So we brought these folks down to train on how to use these systems, how to build solar ovens, how to build solar refrigerators, because it was important to me not to just go there and install these things for them and give these things to them for free, because they need to be able to spread this in Puerto Rico, and so that more people can have access to it. And if it's just us hoarding all the knowledge of how to do it, it's not going to be as effective. So these folks came down here, and one of them was Tito Kayak, who is a really a national hero in Puerto Rico. He helped stop the bombings by the U.S. Navy and Vieques. The Navy was dropping and testing bombs in the waters there for many years, destroying the ocean, destroying the ecosystem, and finally one of their bombs killed someone, and that is when people, including Tito, stood up and said, no more. And he drove his kayak in front of a U.S. Navy ship that was entering Vieques and stopped it from going. And many Catholic workers came to Vieques in support of this movement, and they camped out on the beach, and they ultimately stopped the bombings there. The U.S. did stop bombing there, so this was a rare win in our movement, I think. And So he, I when starting this project, I reached out to Catholic workers saying, hey, do you know anybody in Puerto Rico who would like to come learn about solar in in Virginia, in central Virginia, away from the beautiful ocean? And Marianne Grady Flores of the Ithaca Catholic Worker said, yeah, I know the most famous electrician in Puerto Rico, and he's also an incredible activist. And so Tito Kayak started something called Electricians in Action, Electricians in Action, that it's a collective of electricians who go around Puerto Rico fixing people's electricity for free. And when Luma cuts someone's electricity for non-payment, they reconnect it. And they are just an incredible group. And so he came down, and 12 other people came down, and they learned how to work DC microgrid systems. So we I took a trip with Debbie Peason from Living Energy Farm to Puerto Rico in November to scout the different sites we were going to bring these solar ovens and refrigerators and panels to. And ended up meeting some just incredible people doing amazing work. Like, I paid $80,000 for a school and a church, and I met a woman in Puerto Rico who scaled a fence to a closed school and just took it and and started a community center there. And I was like, oh, I have something to learn from these people. And
You might get a couple different headlines with that one.
yeah, well, so this school now, it's turned into, it's called Fundación Burcarabón, and it's a resource center. They cook food there and deliver it around to this really remote town that they're in. There were 700 schools that have been closed in Puerto Rico in the past 5 years since Hurricane Maria. Um, and I couldn't believe there were that many schools on a small island, but the schools were very localized there. Every town had a school. And so 700 of them out of like 850 approximately have been closed. So people are retaking these schools and turning them into resource centers and community centers and housing. So we visited several different schools that are in need of solar water pumps and solar refrigerators. And we, scouted where we were going to place the solar panels, and also tried to figure out what else we could do to support these people, because a one-time trip bringing solar equipment is nice, but how can we really be in solidarity with these people? So we visited these sites and figured out all the other things that they need, and we're trying to meet those needs now.
Wow. I mean, that's really an amazing initiative there. It also made me think back to something else that you had sort of hit on earlier. But this idea of like needing to rationalize, okay, the way many solar products, electronics, and batteries are produced is unethical. And at the same time, like here's this need in front of you. And it made me think to your story of starting out in the two-bedroom apartment of that's not necessarily the ideal. um, and yet not allowing this like striving for the ideal to stop you from doing the good that's in front of you. Which I feel like is the internal tension that always occurs within Catholic workers, because Catholic workers tend to be this very idealistic bunch. Um,
Yeah.
and so like, yeah, maintaining that vision and at the same time not becoming hampered by it.
Yeah, it's the struggle to figure out, what you are capable of and what your family and your children are going to be comfortable with, right? You need to look at the needs of your family. And yeah, it was so that two-bedroom apartment, bringing women and children into that apartment, it was probably not the most functional way to help people, but we saw that no one else was doing this, and that these children, these mothers cared and loved their children, cared about and loved their children very, very much, and didn't want to see bad things happen to them, right? That's why they weren't going to CPS for help. But bad things were happening to them anyway because their parents were addicted. So, I really resonate with personalism, and which is looking at the problems that are around you and making them your own personal problems and trying to help solve them. So was it always nice for my children to have to see someone who was addicted? And was it nice for them to have these children, after being with us for 3 or 4 months, leaving us, and them not really ever seeing them again? No, it wasn't. But there are people who are suffering far more than my children did. And I feel that it is our duty, as human beings and as believers in a God and a creator, to honor these people and go through a little bit of struggle, a little bit of uncomfortability, in order to see these people get on their feet. I often think, is this too much? Am I doing too much? Am I away from my family too much? Or am I putting them through too much? And no, when I think of a woman and her children crossing a desert to try to get to the States and for a better life for her children, I'm not going through too much. It is not too much for me.
Wonderful. Let's see. I don't know, Theo, do you want to move into our lightning round?
Yeah, let's move into the lightning round. Are you ready, Ericka?
Oh, I'm ready.
All right, lightning. Name a role model.
A role model. Well, my role model day to day, day in and day out, is Sue Frankel Strait here at Littleflower. She, her strength and commitment is just incredible. She is, almost 60. Oh, maybe I shouldn't say. I don't think, but I don't think she'd be offended. But yeah, we work together, and we'll be gardening or doing a project, and I'll be exhausted, and she'll be like, "Oh, okay, I'm gonna go for an hour-long jog now. See you later." Okay, and just her, she has, at a time in her life where, she should be sort of sitting down and relaxing a little bit. She's raising 4 teenagers, and had 3 babies at home births, and is coaching me through my home birth that will happen in about 2 weeks, 2 or 3 weeks. And just a selfless, salt of the earth person.
All right. Dogs or cats?
I like both. Um, dogs are necessary on a farm. They provide protection, and they're wonderful to cuddle with. And we also have 2 cats here. Um, we call them our Catholic workers.
Finally, what is the most important quality to have when living in community?
Hmm. Let's see. The most important quality, I think, is not to be easily offended. You know, when someone tells you, hey, you didn't, pick up your dirty dishes last night, or, you left laundry in the washer, it's easy for a lot of people to be like, oh, well, I was very busy and I was doing this. You know, you cannot be easily offended. You have to take criticism and direction well.
Definitely good advice.
Yeah, because we're all, we live, this farm has 3 houses, and only one of them has a kitchen and flushing toilets. So, we're all in the main house at least 3 times a day, breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Um, so we live very closely together. We share 3 meals a day with each other usually. So, and for someone who is easily offended, that is not, it's not good for you to live in such close quarters with people. But when you like and love the people that you live with, it's easy not to get offended and just be like, oh yeah, I will clean this floor. I will get my clothes out the washer. I will, do extra dishes. You have to love and care about the people that you live with too. Yeah.
All right, we're so thankful to Ericka for being willing to share her story with us today. She mentions sharing in part to help others who might have some hesitation in being associated with something with the name of Catholic in it. And what's interesting is that has also sort of been really part of our mission here with the podcast all along, to try to help share the stories and ideas of the Catholic worker to be more easily accessible for people who are unfamiliar with it. In Ericka's interview, there's so many great parts that I think we really could spend hours diving deeper into. Things like the dynamic of race within the movement, raising kids in community, living sustainably. There's so much here that we could get into if we really were taking a deep dive into this.
Yeah, I also was glad that Ericka shared her story about the Catholic piece. Um, I've met a lot of Catholic workers over the years, and there really are just folks with all these different stories and backgrounds, and then that leads to feelings about the Catholic Church, and for some, it's just almost like irrelevant to their experience of the movement, and for other folks, it's just like hard to grasp how that could be. So I think her story really shares why folks would be hesitant to associate with the Catholic Church, even though they love the Catholic worker movement.
Mm-hmm. I think there is this piece of, once people are able to dive into some of the values and the activism and the exploration of just this, in some ways, idealistic thought, um, that it really starts to resonate with people who maybe aren't attracted by that Catholic piece. For some people, the Catholic piece is a huge attraction. But yeah, I think for many others, it's sort of a discovering of what it's about.
One of the things I was thinking about from this interview is last time we tried to talk a little bit about decentralization
Hmm.
and Ericka's project. She's been working with the folks in Puerto Rico and a decentralized power grid, and how that's maybe a good example of that decentralized value going into place. Like, literally the physical infrastructure of creating energy is decentralized, which, responding to hurricanes and stuff like that. is a useful thing. The knowledge of how to do that was being decentralized into like the community itself in this project instead of just this monopoly power company they have there, So yeah, I just thought that it was fun to have that real life example on the episode right after.
Yeah. Yeah, Erica's involved in so many things of from raising kids to power to raising money for renovations to activism, supporting BIPOC groups. Um, yeah, Catholic workers do tend to get involved in a little bit of everything.
Yeah, and I was really admiring her like willing to just jump into it-ness and be like, yeah, we're going to start this Catholic worker in Elizabeth with a duplex, just
Hmm.
trying to help one family at a time, doing what we can and stuff, attempting this project of just buying a church and all these great things. Like, I don't know, I don't feel in my life I've been as like just jump in there and do it the way she has.
Sure. Yeah, one topic that she touched on in this thought of assessing, okay, jumping in and doing it is a very different kind of life and the balance of trying to figure out, okay, what is right to do while having kids. And I think that is probably would be a good thing for a future episode of diving in with some Catholic worker parents of what their decision making process has looked like and how to have family life and this intensity of community at the same time. I know that's something that my spouse and I are thinking about as we think about over the next few years of what would it look like to have kids in community.
That could be like a whole separate podcast of talking to different Catholic worker parents. I'm sure there are so many thoughts and experiences involved in all of that through the years.
Don't make more work for us, Theo. That wraps up for us another episode with Coffee with Catholic Workers. If you'd like to reach out to us with any comments, suggestions, clarification of thought, feel free to email us at coffeewithcatholicworkers@gmail.com. We want to thank Chris from the Bloomington Catholic Worker for help with editing and David Hayes for our music.
Thanks for joining us again for some clarification of thought. We hope today's conversation and discussion have been enlightening and maybe even that you're encouraged to go out and help build a world where it's easier to be good.